Hello my friends, today we'll be talking about the traditional African funeral customs of South Sudan. More specifically, we'll be focused on the southwest region of the country where we find the art of memorial funerary posts. Through the duration of our conversation, you'll see footage of the creation of a 3D modeled version of these funeral sculptures, which we will reveal the final results of at the end of the video. In the past, scholars labeled all of these funerary posts from South Sudan as objects made by the Bongo people. In reality, there are multiple ethnic groups in this region besides just the Bongo who made such posts, including Belanda, Basiri, Madi-Moro, Kref, and others. There's at least two names that have been documented for these sculptures. Among the Western groups, like the Bongo and Belanda, they are known as Ngya. But their neighbors in the east, such as the Morokodu and Avukaya, call these sculptures Lusi. Stylistically, Lusi tend to be more abstract renderings, often not even including a face, whereas the Ngya, often but not always, have a full body. Generally speaking, funerary posts represent founding patriarchs, leaders, heroes, and more. These small groups of people tend to live in relative isolation. The social structure of these peoples contains a system of clans that usually has less than 100 members per clan, and they are led by an important elder. Men of high status are given a special burial place, which is typically graced with one or more life-sized carvings. Only talented specialists would carve these sculptures. The figures not only represented the deceased, but also served as a monument for the living. Additionally, these carvings are said to have the ability to scare away witches. And one more interesting use for these statues was a judicial function. Since the statues are carved as a portrait of a dead man, if this man was thought to have been killed by another member of the village, it would be put on display during a special village gathering. Its sudden appearance would frighten the guilty culprit, who, by trying to run away, would be identified and punished. Now, as I'm sure you've noticed, the level of visual realism on these figures varies greatly. It's not clear to what extent the effigies were supposed to resemble the deceased, but clearly some of these figures look more like actual humans than others. Plus, in some cases, the sculptures replicate personal adornments such as bracelets and scarification marks. Aside from the effigy of the man who passed away, his living relatives would also add posts with notches on it that recorded how many large animals and human enemies that he killed. And sometimes effigies of those he slayed would be added as well, though in other cases these tally marks are carved directly onto the main figure's body itself instead of the separate post. Yep, that's right, they did literal kill tallies. Sounds like this would be a perfect memorial for good old Eric Killmonger. Besides just glorifying those violent accomplishments, sometimes other life accomplishments were visually manifested as well, in that sometimes sculptures would be made to represent the man's wife and children, to show that he had a prosperous family life. The construction of a Bongo and Belanda grave entails digging a vertical shaft with a terminal chamber for the corpse, which was bounded in a tightly contracted position. The chamber entrance is sealed with wooden stakes and then plastered on the outside with earth. The shaft is filled in and stones are piled over the grave. Roughly a year after death, the village has a feast in the dead man's honor, and finally the wooden anthropomorphic post is erected by his relatives. The exact method of this burial custom varies among the different ethnic groups. At least 3 other versions have been documented. Among the Mitu groups, the graves are surrounded by 4-feet-high stakes, and the central area is filled with ironstones. In front of the stakes is where the wooden effigies are placed. For the Moro, a dead man's body is rubbed with oil and then placed in a chamber closed by wooden stakes. On top of this, stones are laid, and over time, an earthen mound is raised over the grave. Lastly, the Avukaya people would carve a grave out of a large anthill. It had a vertical shaft chamber that was covered by stakes, as well as a plastered conical mound constructed over the grave. Then, to finish the grave, the mound was topped with the wooden memorial post. Alrighty, it's time to reveal our finished 3D model. It took me a long time to decide which of the funerary posts I wanted to make. For a while I was considering creating a full body gaudy one, but due to my schedule I decided it was best to go with one of the more simple geometric posts. That said, I really like the design of this particular Bongo Ngya, and I hope you do as well. If you enjoyed learning with us today, please remember to subscribe to Red Spirit Mask and click that like button. Thank you.